You wake up in your one-room peasant cottage in 1348, and the first thing you notice isn't the smell of yesterday's pottage or the cold seeping through your wattle and daub walls. It's the sound, tiny feet scurrying across your wooden table, the soft gnawing of teeth working through your winter grain stores, the rustling in your straw bedding that definitely isn't you. Welcome to medieval pest control, where your biggest enemies are smaller than your fist, multiply faster than you can count, and carry diseases that could wipe out a third of Europe. You're about to become a pest control expert using nothing but household items, garden herbs, and techniques so clever they'd make a modern exterminator jealous. You're about to learn that medieval peasants weren't helpless victims of rodent invasion. They were creative, determined, and surprisingly effective at fighting back against their tiny tormentors. You just needed to think like a medieval MacGyver with access to nothing but what Mother Nature provided. The feline solution. Let's start with the obvious one. The method's so effective it's still the gold standard today. You need a cat. And by need, I mean your survival literally depends on having a furry, four-legged killing machine patrolling your home. Medieval farmers often wouldn't feed their cats to encourage them to hunt rodents, which sounds cruel by today's standards, but was actually practical genius. A hungry cat is a motivated cat. A motivated cat is a dead rat-producing machine. Your average medieval household had 2 to 3 black rats, each supporting 4 to 5 fleas, and those rats were reproducing faster than medieval rabbits. But one good barn cat could hunt dozens of rodents per week. The medieval solution was simple. Get a cat, give it just enough food to survive but not enough to get lazy, and let nature handle the rest. Cats were so valued for pest control that even medieval monasteries kept them to protect their libraries from rodents that would damage valuable manuscripts. But here's where it gets interesting. You didn't just want any cat. You wanted a working cat, not a pet. Medieval cats had one job: kill rodents. They were essentially medieval employees with fuzzy resumes and excellent hunting references. Some farmers got creative with the cat method. Cat corpses with dead mice stuffed in their mouths were sometimes built into the foundations of houses, as it was thought this would deter other rodents from entering. It was like psychological warfare, but with dead cats. The message was clear. This house has professional rat killers. Enter at your own risk. The downside? Cats were sometimes killed during plague years because people associated them with witchcraft, which was basically like throwing away your pest control system during the exact time you needed it most. Medieval people. Brilliant at some things, spectacularly bad at others. The herbal warfare approach. If cats weren't available, you turned to your garden for chemical warfare, medieval style. Wormwood, mugwort, or southernwood planted around the farmstead would prevent snakes from entering and drive away those already there, and the same principle applied to rodents. These herbs didn't just smell bad to humans, they were actively repulsive to rodents. Wormwood and rosemary prevented insects from damaging clothing, and rue with its acrid odor helped fend off vermin and their accompanying diseases. You'd harvest these herbs, dry them, and scatter them around your grain stores, in your bedding, and anywhere rodents might want to set up shop. The medieval peasants' anti-rodent herb kit included wormwood, the nuclear option of medieval pest control. This stuff was so bitter and repulsive that it was literally used to wean babies by putting it on nipples. If it could make a hungry baby say no thanks, imagine what it did to rats. Rue smelled like medieval chemical warfare and was just as effective. Scatter it around your house and rodents would literally turn around and find somewhere else to live. Mugwort, a gentler option that still got the job done. Plus, it had the bonus of being useful for other medieval ailments. The beauty of this method was that you could grow your own pest control system, plant these herbs around your house, harvest them when needed, and you had a renewable source of rodent repellent that didn't require feeding or maintenance. Modern science has actually proven this works. Wormwood contains compounds that have insecticidal properties, and many of these herbs are still used in natural pest control today. The poisoning game. Now we're getting into the medieval equivalent of chemical warfare. And by chemical warfare, I mean really, really dangerous plants mixed with everyday food items. Medieval peasants had access to some seriously toxic herbs, and they weren't afraid to use them. John Gerard recommended using hellebore root in the weight of 2 pence mixed with honey and wheat flour to kill mice and rats. Hellebore was essentially medieval rat poison, extremely effective and extremely deadly if you accidentally got the dose wrong. Other options included the juice of bruised wild cucumber, which slays the mice, as diverse men have said. Medieval people were essentially running chemistry experiments in their kitchens, mixing plant toxins with bait to create custom rat poisons. The most popular poison baits were black hellebore mixed with fat, bread, cheese, or flour, wild cucumber juice mixed with grain, aconite, monkshood, one of the most deadly plants in Europe, used sparingly. But here's the thing about medieval poisoning. It wasn't just about killing rats. It was about creating a reputation. Word gets around in the rodent community. Use poison effectively a few times and suddenly rats start avoiding your house entirely. It's like medieval psychological warfare with a side of actual warfare. The downside was obvious. These plants could kill you just as easily as they killed rats. Medieval peasants had to be extremely careful with dosing and storage. Get it wrong, and you might solve your rat problem by accidentally solving your own existence problem. The Trap Master's Toolkit. Medieval traps were works of engineering genius built from whatever was lying around. Professional rat catchers used traps made of little planks upon sticks, but peasants had to get creative with household items. The oil pan trap. Pour thick oil into a pan which would catch rodents at night, with the dregs able to slay more than your cats. Basically, you'd set up a pan of oil that rats would fall into and couldn't escape from. Simple, effective, and reusable. The drowning pool method. Following ancient Egyptian techniques, you'd create water-filled containers that would lure rodents away from food sources and cause them to drown. Position them strategically around your house, and rats would literally remove themselves from your property. The box and stick classic. The medieval version of the classic cartoon trap. A box propped up with a stick, baited with cheese or grain. When the rat goes for the bait, the stick falls, box traps the rat. Simple physics, effective results. The grain jar trap. Take a large ceramic jar, put grain in the bottom, and coat the rim with grease or oil. Rats climb in for the grain but can't climb back out the slippery walls. It's like a medieval roach motel, but for rats. The genius of medieval traps was their simplicity. No complex mechanisms, no expensive materials, just basic physics and an understanding of rodent behavior. A good trap could work for years with minimal maintenance. Plus, successful trapping had psychological benefits. Every dead rat was proof that you were winning the war. Every trap that worked was a small victory in a world where small victories were sometimes all you had. The spiritual warfare method. This is where medieval pest control gets wonderfully weird. There are historical records of people using the names of saints and various religious incantations to try to drive rats out of cities and towns across Europe. And before you laugh, remember that medieval people took this stuff seriously. One medieval text recommends writing on paper, "I conjure any mice caught here to do me no harm, and to prevent other mice doing so. I give you the following land, and name it. If I find you still here, I take the mother of the gods to witness. I will cut you into 7 pieces. Then you'd fix the paper before sunrise against a natural rock in the field where the mice were. This wasn't just superstition. It was psychological warfare. The act of writing the threat, posting it publicly, and declaring your intention to fight back was actually a form of mental preparation for the real pest control work that would follow. Some people tried rhyming rats to death or using bagpipes to scare them away. The bagpipe method might actually have worked. Loud, sustained noise could definitely drive rodents away from an area. The spiritual approach also included blessing your traps before setting them, praying over your grain stores for protection, invoking Saint Gertrude, the patron saint of pest control, creating protective charms from herbs and religious symbols. While this method probably didn't kill many rats directly, it served important psychological functions. It made people feel like they were fighting back, it prepared them mentally for the real work ahead, and it created community solidarity around the pest control effort. The architectural defense strategy. Prevention was always better than cure, and medieval peasants knew it. Smart medieval builders designed rodent resistance right into their homes. The first rat-proof granary was constructed by Marcus Pollio, a Roman architect in 13 BCE, and medieval builders adapted these techniques for smaller-scale use. Elevated storage. Keep grain, cheese, and other food at least 3 feet off the ground. Rats can climb, but they prefer not to if there are easier targets available. Smooth surfaces. Line storage containers with metal or very smooth wood that rodents can't grip. Medieval Chinese farmers used V-shaped ceramic vessels the size of giant flower vases, designed to keep stored grain out of the mouths of scavengers. Strategic hole blocking. Block up mouse holes with daffodils. They gnaw it out, but dead down shall they fall. Medieval people discovered that certain plants were toxic to rodents when chewed, so they'd use them as natural pest-proof caulking. Foundation defenses. Build your food storage areas with stone foundations that rats couldn't burrow through. Create barriers around the perimeter of your house using materials that rodents found difficult to cross. Tight-fitting lids. All containers had to seal completely. Medieval craftsmen became experts at creating storage containers that were essentially rodent-proof safes. The architectural approach required planning and initial investment, but it paid dividends for years. A well-designed medieval home could reduce rodent problems by 90% before you even started active pest control measures. The Natural Predator Recruitment Program. Cats weren't the only animals medieval peasants recruited for pest control duty. Dogs. Certain breeds, especially terriers, were excellent rat hunters. By the early 18th century, rat catchers used terrier dogs trained to find and kill rats. Medieval peasants with the right dogs could clear rat infestations quickly and efficiently. Weasels. Wild weasels were natural rat predators, and smart peasants would try to encourage them to live near their properties. One text suggests that if you catch a weasel, cut off its tail or testicles, and let it go alive, you won't find any more weasels on your farm afterward, though this might have been more about territorial marking than actual pest control. Owls and hawks. Encouraging birds of prey to nest near your property provided natural rodent control. Medieval peasants would build nesting boxes and leave food scraps to attract these natural predators. Snakes. While most people feared snakes, smart peasants knew that non-venomous snakes were excellent rodent controllers. A snake living in your barn was like having a 24/7 pest control service. The key was creating an ecosystem where predators wanted to live and hunt. This meant leaving some wild areas around your property, providing water sources, and not being too aggressive about cleaning up every corner of your land. This method required patience and ecological thinking that was quite advanced for the time. But peasants who successfully managed predator populations often had significantly fewer rodent problems than their neighbors. The biological warfare approach. Medieval peasants discovered that nature provided its own pest control methods. They just had to be clever about deploying them. Disease induction. If oak ashes were cast around mouse holes, then a disease called the scab could be expected to soon arise and kill the unfortunate rodents. Medieval people had figured out that certain substances could trigger skin diseases in rodents that would spread through populations. Fungal warfare. Damp grain stores could develop fungi that were harmless to humans but deadly to rodents. Smart peasants learned to identify and cultivate these beneficial fungi in strategic locations. Parasitic assistance. While medieval people didn't understand parasites scientifically, they observed that certain conditions would cause rodent populations to crash due to parasitic infections. They learned to replicate these conditions artificially. Territorial disruption. Spreading the scent of dead rats in areas where live rats congregated would often cause the surviving population to abandon the territory. It was psychological warfare using biology. Food source contamination, adding small amounts of substances that would make rodents sick, but not kill them immediately, to bait would create learned avoidance. Rats that got sick from eating in your area would tell other rats to stay away. This method required sophisticated observation skills and patience. Medieval peasants had to understand rodent behavior, disease patterns, and ecological relationships. It was advanced biological warfare using medieval technology. The community coordination tactics. Medieval pest control was often a village-wide effort that required coordination and cooperation. Synchronized poisoning. If everyone in the village used poison at the same time, rats couldn't just move from house to house to escape. This required planning, communication, and shared resources. Professional rat catchers. Villages would hire professional rat catchers who were colorful figures, often dressed in fancy clothing, who appeared at county fairs and marketplaces telling stories and performing juggling acts in addition to their primary job of rodent extermination. Information sharing. Peasants shared information about effective methods, rat movement patterns, and resource availability. If someone discovered a particularly effective trap design or poison recipe, word spread quickly through the community. Seasonal campaigns. Villages would organize coordinated pest control efforts during specific seasons when rodent populations were most vulnerable or when food stores were most at risk. Resource pooling. Expensive materials like metal for traps or rare herbs for poisons could be purchased collectively and shared among village families. The community approach was especially important because rats are smart. If you solved your rat problem by driving them away, they'd just become your neighbor's rat problem. Village-wide coordination ensured that the rodent population was actually reduced, not just relocated. Medieval villages that successfully organized pest control efforts had significantly better food security and lower disease transmission rates than those that didn't. The timing and psychology mastery. The most sophisticated medieval peasants understood that effective pest control was about timing, psychology, and understanding rodent behavior. Seasonal warfare. Attack during late autumn when rodents were preparing for winter and had limited alternative food sources. This was when traps and poisons were most effective because rats couldn't afford to be picky about food. Lunar timing. Many medieval texts recommended pest control activities during specific moon phases. While the scientific basis is questionable, the psychological effect of feeling like you were working with natural forces was important for maintaining motivation. Behavioral exploitation. Medieval people observed that rats reproduced faster than any other animal and used this knowledge to time their attacks for maximum impact on breeding populations. Territory disruption. Move all furniture and stored goods regularly to disrupt rat nesting areas. Make your house an unstable environment where rats couldn't establish comfortable territories. Scent management. Understand which smells attracted rats and which repelled them. Strategic use of both attractive and repulsive scents could manipulate rat movement patterns. Persistence campaigns. Never give up after initial success. Maintain pressure consistently over months and years. Medieval peasants who succeeded long-term were those who treated pest control as an ongoing lifestyle, not a one-time project. The psychological aspect was crucial. Successful pest control required confidence, persistence, and the belief that you could outsmart creatures that had been surviving alongside humans for thousands of years. The medieval mindset. 10 methods that medieval peasants used to fight back against rodent invasions using nothing but their wits, natural resources, and sheer determination. But here's what's really amazing about medieval pest control. It worked. Not perfectly, not always, but well enough that human civilization survived and thrived despite sharing their living spaces with creatures designed by evolution to eat their food and spread disease. Medieval peasants understood something that modern people sometimes forget. Pest control isn't just about killing pests. It's about creating an environment where pests don't want to live, can't survive easily, and face constant pressure from multiple sources. They combined cats with herbs, traps with poisons, architecture with biology, and individual effort with community coordination. They understood that different methods worked better in different seasons, different locations, and different circumstances. Most importantly, they understood that this was a war of attrition. You didn't win by killing every rat once. You won by making rat life so difficult and dangerous in your area that future generations of rats learned to live somewhere else. The medieval approach to pest control was holistic, sustainable, and surprisingly effective. These peasants were dealing with the same basic problem we face today, sharing our living spaces with creatures that want the same resources we do, but they solved it using renewable resources, local knowledge, and community cooperation. Modern pest control has given us more powerful tools, but the basic principles remain the same: prevention, multiple methods, persistence, and understanding your enemy. The next time you see a mouse in your house and reach for a store-bought trap or call an exterminator, remember that a medieval peasant would have grabbed some wormwood, checked their cat's hunting schedule, baited 3 different types of traps, said a prayer to Saint Gertrude, and started planning a village-wide poisoning campaign. They might have lived in one-room cottages with dirt floors and no running water, but when it came to pest control, medieval peasants were sophisticated, determined, and surprisingly successful warriors in humanity's ongoing battle against our smallest and most persistent enemies. Your ancestors didn't just survive the medieval world, they thrived in it, one dead rat at a time. And honestly, their methods were so effective that many of them are still used today. Cats, herbs, traps, architectural prevention, and community coordination, all still standard pest control practices. The medieval peasant might not have had modern chemistry or electronic devices, but they had something even more valuable: a complete understanding of the enemy they were fighting and the absolute determination to win. In a world where survival depended on keeping rats out of your grain stores, failure wasn't an option. So they didn't fail. They got creative, they got cooperative, and they got results. Medieval pest control, proving that human ingenuity plus local resources plus sheer bloody-mindedness can solve almost any problem. Even if that problem has whiskers, breeds faster than rabbits, and carries plague.